we're currently stood on the street that I grew up on. I grew up in a house down there, and the very first drummer, Jay, grew up in a house down there. Basically, the band started first day of secondary school when we were like 12 years old. I'd already been playing guitar for a few years. I knew that that's all I wanted to do, but I didn't know anyone that played any other instruments. So first class I had, I'm sat next to Jay. Didn't know him, but turns out he played drums, and it turns out he lived down my street. So I pretty much, that day, grabbed my amp and my guitar, took it down to his house, and that's the start of Sylosis. Where we're at now musically is actually like the closest we've been to how the band would have sounded when we started if we'd had the skills and the knowledge to write the music and play the music that we really wanted to play. So basically the first year was just me and Jay just hanging out and jamming and writing music.
Our first rehearsals were in my room, and it was on the top floor, which was cool because it was away from everybody else. They had to go up 3 floors to get to the room. But sound travelled. So like everyone in the neighbourhood could hear us play when we played. And then very quickly Josh started writing songs after that, and was obviously the driving force behind everything.
Got speaking to Rich, who was our first other guitarist.
I knew Josh, I was around sort of 13, 14-ish. Started playing guitar around that sort of time. Josh had already been playing for a number of years before, and was already like a really accomplished guitarist from a pretty young age. I just kind of discovered metal after hearing Metallica's Black Album.
I didn't know anyone else that liked heavy music, and then Jay was like, oh, I know this kid called Glenn. He can sing.
We're Sylosis, we're from Reading.
Musically, we set out with a clear objective to be Reading's heaviest band. And it was a goal from day one that Josh had stamped on the band, and that every member that we brought on from day one, that was like a clear guiding principle.
The first show we ever did was a battle of the bands, and we sucked, but we won somehow.
We covered Cannibal Corpse, we played a few of our own songs, and we won the Battle of the Bands.
We had no money because we were kids at the time, essentially. We took part in a Battle of the Bands where we didn't actually have a bass player at the time, and I remember between songs having to switch between rhythm guitar and bass guitar for some tracks just to get the gig done, and then the prize was to record our first demo.
First prize was recording studio for a day, so we won the recording of our first demo, which was garbage, hot garbage. I think me and Jay on our way to school would walk past this kid wearing a Deftones hoodie all the time, and that was shocking because there was no one else in the area that liked heavy music. Somehow got speaking to him, and that ended up being Carl, who we got in. We knew he played a bit of guitar, so we're like, you can play bass. So we finally had a full lineup. So the first year or two was just the 5 of us. Me on guitar, Jay on drums, Rich on guitar, Glenn on vocals, Carl on bass. And we played locally for a bit. And then we eventually met Dave Anderson, who became our second singer.
I met Josh in 2001. I was singing, well, I say singing, more like screaming and making terrible noise in a grindcore band. We had these rehearsal spaces, and I was in there one day. I came out and bumped into Josh, and we got talking, hit it off straight away, and he asked if I wanted to come and do some vocals with his band, Sylosis. I said yes. The rest is history, as they say. Sorry. I didn't know any of the other guys. I'd seen them around, like Rich, Glenn, and Jay, the original drummer, but I'd never really spoken to them, so we went to a rehearsal. St. Richie Junction, Impact Studios. My first thought was how fucking loud it was. hit it off straight away with Glenn, the other singer. He invited me back to his house and we just spent the whole night listening to music.
I think there's no one in it. So this is our first thing at Glenn's old house, and it's 100% haunted. We used to walk past it on our way home from school, so we just hang out here and listen to music, download shit off Napster, and no one lives there anymore. Yeah, we used to make a lot of instant noodles in this house. We used to knock on that door, is Glenn home? Glenn's bedroom up there. Always get some super noodles. Just eat noodles every day after school. Sixth had already been around for a bit on the local or the UK scene, and they had 2 singers, and we were like, we can have 2 singers. So we got Dave in, and Dave introduced us to a lot of different music. He was into a lot more kind of noisy grindcore stuff like Pig Destroyer, Burnt by the Sun. When he brought that record round to my house once, that was like a game changer for us. And loads of stuff like Dillinger Escape Plan and Poison the Well, and he definitely like had a new influence on the band as well. So we're literally just round the corner from the street we grew up on. This is Cemetery Junction. It's a traffic junction with a cemetery in it. This is literally the first place we had our proper rehearsals when we upgraded from Jay's bedroom. So we'd come here, it used to be called The Cell, and before that it was called Impact Studios. So when we started, the bands we were listening to that inspired us was like Slayer, Slipknot, Sepultura, every band that began with S.
Metallica, obviously. There were some other more sort of niche bands that we were into, like Pissing Razors.
I can see then the thrash influence that Josh had that eventually became Sylosis, but at the time it was very like, how can we be as heavy as possible? Probably skewed towards a lot of Pantera and Slipknot. Josh was listening to Morbid Angel, maybe, and a bit more death. So there was a lot of different influences. Rich was definitely listening to way more Metallica than the rest of us, and that pulled the band more towards a deathy sound. But like, you know, teenage death metal wasn't particularly well thought out.
Machine Head, Fear Factory, and then we started to get into more like extreme stuff like Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel.
Poison the Well, Dillinger Escape Plan, Pig Destroyer, Decapitated, anything heavy.
It was all down-tuned, so we started off, we were playing in like drop B for the first like 3 or 4 years of the band.
It was great being around like like-minded people, into metal, into music, anything heavy.
After a while we really wanted to, we were trying to push Jay to get faster and do more like double pedal and blast beats and stuff, and it just wasn't really his thing, so we switched drummers. We got our friend Chris Steele in. That was like a bit of a pivotal moment because he had really fast double pedal feet, he could blast beat and stuff. As we were getting more and more into extreme music, we wanted to incorporate a lot more of that stuff, and he was like the only drummer around that could play like extreme music.
I think I joined the band in 2002 or 3. I was in another band at the time with Exit 10. I'd come across Sylosis just being another Reading band doing their thing. I remember kind of tracking down their website and thinking it's pretty cool, but there was sort of already kind of like rumours and people kind of talking about the band, but particularly Josh. This was like a guy, he was shredding, he was, you know, insane talent and stuff. So I was tracking down the band to try and check out him. His email address was on their website, adding him on MSN Messenger just to sort of talk to him a little bit. He was sort of saying how, you know, the music he was writing was quite fast and stuff, and that he could play drums, because there was this whole rumour that he was like a great drummer as well. I was like, oh yeah, I play drums as well. And he was like, oh, I can play Sick by Slipknot. I can do that like double bass bit. I was like, oh cool, yeah. No, I think I could do that too. And I think he at the time was maybe potentially looking for a drummer that can maybe do a little bit more with the feet. So I offered my services, and he kept sort of grilling me about how quick my feet were and whether I can play to a certain speed and a certain tempo, and I said, well, you can try it. And he sent me some songs, and I went along to the first rehearsal, and that was pretty much it. It was all in the feet. The band's music at the time was like, there was a real kind of like energy and chaos about it, and it had this 2 vocal thing going on, and you know, I was already kind of like slightly in awe of the band before I had that first rehearsal. But realistically, you know, I got in the room, they were a really, really funny bunch of guys, and were just sort of making me laugh a lot. I remember there being a song called Splinters at the time with like this double kick part in there that almost felt like that was the point of like audition really at that point. If I could nail that bit, Josh would be happy. Getting through that and everyone kind of going at the end of the song like, yeah, cool, that was it. I was just getting into bands like Decapitated, Hate Eternal, that kind of stuff. Those are more influences on my style, and then more and more so that kind of death thrash stuff started influencing the riffs too, or the music. Yeah, it was early days, still kind of coming out of that, what was still kind of the back end of the new metal cycles, I suppose, as well.
We all set out to be Reading's most extreme metal band, be as heavy, as fast, and as obnoxious as possible. We played with bands that were sort of slightly older than us, and we sort of just wanted to be heavier than everybody else. And half the time we were the youngest.
We were still too young to like drive ourselves to shows. We were still too young to be in some of the bars that we were playing, so our parents would have to drive us to a lot of the shows.
Musically, there was a few things that made Sylosis, quite unique in the scene at the time. There wasn't a lot of bands doing this sort of dual vocal thing, but it was very clear that like Josh's prowess on guitar, he was leagues ahead of a lot of other players in the scene, and people would watch Sylosis for Josh. He was getting more and more influenced by thrash, death, metal bands. Music was kind of evolving into that a little bit more. The songs that he would present to us as a band were getting more and more challenging as well. We're getting faster, we're getting heavier. It was 100 miles an hour. We would often play the songs like 2 or 3 times faster than they really should be, to be honest with you. And it was all just very much as extreme as possible and as fast as possible at the time. For me, I was always making sure that Josh was happy. If Josh was happy with what you were putting out, then I was happy. So as long as he was impressed, or as long as it was as fast and as tight as possible, that's all I really cared about.
The early days, the early rehearsals, was usually me just being hard on everyone and coming down on everyone for not rehearsing or practicing their instruments enough, or just like trying to whip everyone into shape in terms of like practicing the songs.
It was quite frantic. A lot of the music was very, very frantic and chaotic. And that was my first proper taste of studio recording music like that. So because I was always quite intrigued by Sylosis in general, this was just at the time when I was trying to connect a little bit with Josh and stuff, and always had, heard rumours about them, and they got a bit of a reputation and stuff. So I actually travelled up to see them play a Battle of the Bands show in North London, just to kind of check it out and see what it was really like. Carl on bass, windmilling, you had Josh just pulling off wild solos and stuff, as what seemed like a really, really young kid at the time. It was a really impressive thing, and they stood out from a lot of the other bands again on the bill. There was just something very aggressive, very abrasive about what they were doing. And I look back at a lot of that period of time in Sylosis, massively vital for my development as a musician. The music he was writing was really challenging, and it really pushed me and pushed my ability. And a lot of the time in those early days, Josh would sort of present riffs, ideas and drum parts that you just had to hit and you had to play at the tempos that he had written them. It was great fun to sort of be challenging myself constantly with what he was writing and coming out with, which was getting more and more, it was getting faster, it was getting better. As he was progressing as a guitar player and a songwriter as well. So I think it was massively important for all of our development, the way that Josh kept kind of pushing the boundaries of what we were doing.
Because I was in Sylosis between 2001 and 2005. I think it was more burning some CDs and giving them out, handing out demos. This was before any streaming services.
Some records that were really influential to us was like, in particular, Great Southern Tranquil by Pantera and Iowa by Slipknot, because both those records just had like an intensity to them that was like super aggressive, super heavy and intense, but not strictly like death metal or extreme metal. So that was sort of like where we were aiming towards, like just like a metal band that was just heavier than all the other metal bands around.
We all figured out Josh was a lot better than the rest of us, and we probably should let him, go off and find musicians that match his quality. You've got this heart that's still very much from our hometown, right? And even though like a lot of the members have been in the band and moved on, we're all still friends. I think that's like a testament to the kind of band that Sylosis are, really.
We were just like the band that we were for a while, just the guys in school. We always got on well as people, like we were all just like friends and just hung out with each other all day, every day.
There was a lot of good talent, musical talent in the scene, and there were places like the Purple Turtle that we're in now, and Pavlov's Dog, the Fez Club, that were local sort of haunts where you could walk in at any time and everyone would know each other.
We didn't realise at the time that Josh was going to be one of the best guitarists of his generation, and he was playing with just 3 guys he knew because of geography. But obviously we kind of helped him get to the next step in building Sylosis, which is cool. He's still in Reading, right? He's never forgotten where he's from, and I think all of Sylosis comes from that perspective of the metal bands that we grew up with and we were playing with, and it also comes from the friendships that we started when we were at school. It's still that band.